Hi everyone, this is the Lockdown Lecture Series with a special lecture many of you guys have requested, just basically a crash course on shifting. This is not a thorough, all-intensive course. This is a crash course on shifting. So I will demonstrate a little bit on each instrument, but I will start off on violin. So you're playing on the violin, and you have something like this. You have this note, and then you have this note. You have a third finger marked under this note, and then a fourth finger marked under this note. So normally this is A3. No problem. This, however, is normally E2. So it wouldn't make any sense to take a higher finger and move it down to this. This means that you're going to shift up to this higher note on the A string with your fourth finger. Now, there's a whole conversation to be had about, position numbers, about whether, which position are you shifting to? What is the correct sequence to move your hand from one place to another? But we're not going to go over that today. I will briefly discuss it, but we're not going to work on it. Basically, if I was to ignore the fingerings and just play these two notes, in first position, I would play this, A3, E2. Okay, let me change this here so you guys can see me better. So A3, E2. If I want to play the D on the first position, I just do this. But if I want to play the G, I just have to remember where that sound is and find it. There it is, with my fourth finger. Okay, this is the first step in finding things that are in higher positions. So if I have like a series of notes that are asking me to shift higher, just play them in lower positions first. Listen and memorize the notes, and then you can find them. For example, if there's no fingerings afterwards, like this, it usually means stay in that position. So like if you have these notes coming up next, and then you have like a 1 written down here, that would mean that you just play, if this is 4, then the next note after that is going to be 3, and the next note after that's going to be 2. Okay, so you would play this. You shift up to 4, you find that note, and then you have to know where these notes are, and you shift down, whatever the notes are. You might want to play all of those notes in first position. Just listen to what they sound like. Over and over until you know them. And then finally, just find them in those positions. Now technically, again, these 3 notes are in third position. There's a way to get to them that's specific. But this is just a crash course for if you need to very quickly figure out how to get into higher positions. This is not an extensive look at how to shift. If you are in higher positions, let's say you have similar notes to these, but it's on the E string. So we start with E3. It's like the worst E3 I've ever drawn. My mouse is acting up. Here we go, E3. And my next note is up here. Now obviously I can't play that in first position. That goes really high up. But you can play these exact notes an octave lower. This is an A and this is a D. Here's the A an octave lower. Here's the D an octave lower. Let's say you're supposed to play this with third finger and this with fourth finger. Now you just play these 2 notes an octave lower to hear what they sound like. They would sound like this. Here they are again. And now on the E string, octave higher. And just find that note. You may shift up, you may find that you're a little bit too high or too low, move it around. until you find it. Okay, so this is a quick way to find your way around positions. Now, the best way to find your way and figure out positions, ask your teacher to please explain positions to you. This is just a quick way to make it work while you guys are working on intermediate repertoire, because the intermediate repertoires do not include teaching shifting. That is one technique that takes many months, sometimes a couple years, to figure out even just the basic positions to do it properly. Just very briefly, if you figured out positions, and let's say we're going back to this shift right here. So I'm going from here to here. There are a few ways to do it, and you can kind of choose whichever one is appropriate. In one case, you can take your third finger on the D and shift up to that same finger just below the G, and then play the G. It would kind of sound like this. Or you could do it the other way around. There are times when we have to do this kind of fingering. You actually play fourth finger in the original position, and then you just shift up to your target position, and it would sound like this. Now I'm kind of voicing the shift. Normally you would do it hidden inside the bow change, and you would kind of hide your shift that way. Sometimes you would actually do what's called a jump, and there are string players that believe you should never jump at or ever do this kind of shifting, where you just play one note and you just put your finger down in the next place. It's not a shift. You don't feel the distance that you're going, but you just need to memorize where that location is and just put your finger down. Those are essentially the three most basic ways to shift. You can play around with those a little bit. Now for viola, I will just demonstrate almost the same thing, just in alto clef for you guys. Like here is alto clef. So to play exactly what we just played, but on viola, so it'd be down a fifth, so your notes are going to be a little bit different. If you have this, I will demonstrate only the notes. You guys can use my diagrams here to figure out what I mean for viola. So like here's one of them. The other one would be this and this. Let me grab my viola and I will demonstrate these for you guys. So here's that first example. This would be on your D string. Right? If I wanted to find it, I would just play it in first position. And then I would play it with the shift. And then the same thing for these notes right here. I would find them an octave lower. Like here's the D, and then here's the C right there. Excuse me, that would be the G right there. Mixing up my clefs. The G, an octave lower. So it would be, I remember those, and then I get up on the A string in the high position. The way you do the shifts does not change. You have those three options: original finger to the original finger in the original position up to the original finger in the target position, or the other way around, or you can just jump. I actually recommend that when you start, you just pick whatever way to shift feels intuitive. This is actually, I work with this way a lot with some of my younger intermediate students, and to some schools of pedagogy, this is like sacrilege. I actually don't explain shifting. I would just do something like this. I would, do a series of notes that just go from this note to this note to this note and then I would say first finger, second finger, you know where the next note goes, just put your first finger there. And 90% of people will just shift naturally. They'll just do it right. They'll just do, they'll just be like, oh, okay, I'll just somewhere, I'll finish that note. As I'm finishing the note, I will put the next finger down. Some people make the shift too jerky. Some people make it too slidey. And then when I need to fix it, we fix it. And then a little bit later on, I explain about the 3 different techniques about shifting. Let me just mention a couple things for our cellists, because you guys have a couple things to consider that the violinists and violists don't. Let me grab my cello here. Actually, better yet, here. So let me draw out an example. So let's say I need to play something like this. This is very similar to our first example with the violinists and violists. So I'm going from F to a C, but you have a 2 and a 4. So the first note you would play just as a D2. That's normal, okay? So you have, you just play your D2. So that was my phone. And then my next note would normally be an A2. But I'm supposed to play with the 4th finger. It wouldn't make any sense for me to go into negative half position and do that. So instead, I'm going to go up on my D string to play this note. This note is, I'm just going to find it. There it is. So then I just go back and forth until I remember that distance. Now for you cellists, there is actually a number of ways to even refer to the position, where some cello schools of pedagogy, when you're going up your positions, you're calling them first position, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh position. And some cellists kind of refer to them similar to the violin positions. First position, lower second, higher second, third position, lower fourth, higher fourth, fifth position. And that's known as the Moody system. Many Americans use that system. The half-step position where you just go first, second, third, fourth is often used by the European schools. It doesn't matter. What's important is that you know where those fingers are. What gets tricky is, let's say you have a few more notes, like let's say you have, actually no, I have that bar line. There we go. If you have a few more notes coming after that, you can't just put random fingers down. So let's say you have these 2 notes. At this point, you have to know that this is a C and this is a B. So if I'm up in a higher position, and I'm playing, I have, and now I'm supposed to go down a note. If C and B is only a half step, I'm going to go down from 4 to 3. Right, so here's that 4th finger high note, 3rd finger. And what about the next note? So if I'm on a B, the next note's an A, and I have to know, is there a half step between, B and A, or is it a whole step? Or am I going to go down 1 finger or 2 fingers? You must always, always, always be thinking of that. Otherwise, when you're in higher positions and you see it just go down a note and you're just randomly guessing, I think it's 1 finger down, or 2 fingers down, or so on, you're going to be constantly making mistakes. Thinking half steps before you put your finger down, right when you're starting to learn how to shift, is incredibly important. That's just an additional thing the cellists have to learn how to do. If you have a shift up on the A string, and you have that like going from a C, which is like an A2, and you're supposed to go up to like a G, same thing. You can just play it an octave lower. Play the C, play the G, and then memorize what it sounds like. So you play your, A2. You're like, I don't know what that high note sounds like. play it an octave lower than the G, and do it a few times. I remember what it sounds like now. Same notes, just an octave higher. So a good way to figure out high stuff that way. Again, not a substitute for properly studying your positions, but if you have a few notes you have to play in higher positions, this is a quick way to figure out how to do that. That being said, go ask a private teacher, can you please teach me how to play in higher positions? And, you know, again, be careful with this information. I mean, some string teachers who are really careful about how they teach this, like if they heard someone say, oh, I don't teach shifting, you just go up to that finger on that note, would find it totally sacrilegious. This is just meant to help you guys function. But in some way, I've also seen people overthink shifting, you know. For example, they use the, you know, this, essentially what we do here when we do this, when I explain here, is use an intermediate note. People start becoming reliant on intermediate notes. They actually like play them as if it's part of the music. And in that way, they kind of end up overthinking how they do their shifts. So there's benefits and drawbacks to each one. That being said, this should give you a little bit of insight into how to shift, how to find things in high positions. Good luck, practice, ask your teachers for lots and lots of help. Here's the diagram that I drew if you want to see it a little bit bigger. We'll see you in the regular lecture series.